Welcome to the FML Podcast, the podcast on a mission to uncover actionable insights, explore the latest trends, and to catalyze your fintech's growth. Join Growth Gorilla's founder and managing director, Shanae and some of fintech's hardest-hitting marketers and leaders.
Welcome everyone to today's episode of the FML Podcast. I'm joined by the team here at Growth Gorilla. This is a special edition, hopefully will become a recurring feature, whereby what we'll be doing is covering some headlines going on in the fintech space or the fintech marketing space, talking a little bit about what's going on in the marketing world, and then we're going to do a deep dive into a specific topic. And then eventually, or hopefully, we'll begin to answer some questions from clients and listeners. We haven't decided on the name yet. Maybe that's something that you can help us with. We're stuck between FML Team Talk and FML Unpacked. So if you've got any opinions, reach out to us and let us know. But until further notice, we'll just call it the FML something. So let's kick off. I'll do some quick introductions. I'm joined by Ross, Head of Performance Marketing here at Growth Gorilla, Julia, our Head of Influencer Marketing, and Shanae, our Senior CRM Manager. So let's start off with the headlines. We've got a few here. I'll start off with an easy one. So the Super Bowl 2023, was Rihanna the real winner when it came down to the Super Bowl?
I think everyone was a bit mean to her. I mean, being pregnant, I think people should have given her a bit of a break, but I can completely understand that people kind of felt like, Julia, you said it was 7 years that they had been waiting for her to perform.
I think the disappointment came with the expectation, not that it was actually a bad performance whatsoever.
Yeah. And then I can see how it literally became like a product placement central for her brands. So that's the Savage and the Fenty brands.
But that's what made her a winner, right? Because I can't remember the amount of people that tune into the Super Bowl, but the number's massive. It's in the hundreds of millions. Oh, so it's 112 million. So that's a hell of a... and then not to mention the number of people that will go onto YouTube afterwards and watch the performance and all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's just live.
But the artists actually don't get paid, right? So they get a $15 million budget to put on the event. And in some cases, the artists actually contribute additional budget. So I think The Weeknd a few years back added $7 million into the pot. But they don't get paid to appear. They're literally coming on for free to perform. And that's kind of like, going to the point that we just kind of mentioned that Rihanna's got obviously, Fenty, she's got Savage, she's announced a pregnancy, all of those things combined.
Yep.
I mean, here we are talking about it as a massive marketing maneuver. I think when we talk about brand ambassadors and influencer marketing and things like that, I suppose this is kind of like the mecca of, right? You can't get any more influential than doing 30-minute show at halftime with 112 million people watching in the US.
Well, it's $7 million for 30 seconds and all that.
Yeah, so it's $7 million for 30 seconds for an ad, right? So in reality, she hasn't had to pay for that. I'd say that she's the winner.
Definitely.
Very subtle ad as well.
What was it?
If you think about it.
She stopped
just a little
mid-performance.
Couldn't really see. You could just kind of tell.
We all knew.
I think it was, as subtle as it gets.
But you know what? I think with the advent of influencer, if she'd have done that 5 years ago, no one would have got that. That would have just been part of the routine. But I think people pick up on the subtle little things now.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It was subtle because artists do that, and you couldn't really see the logo or anything. At least I didn't see it. I just knew because obviously
it's implicit that there was going to be Fenty, right? Like there was no way that Rihanna was going to be slapping on some
Dior.
I'm showing my age now. Elizabeth Arden. I don't know the names.
Who?
Elizabeth Arden. My mum wears it. I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm Brazilian. That was just not a brand for us. I don't know. But actually, I think the real winner there was Clean Music. So Clean Music is the guy from Brazil. I think he's 20 years old or something that did the remix for Rude Boy that Rihanna played at the Super Bowl. And I don't even think he knew until then. It's a Brazilian funk remix and the guy's blowing up now. It's just a 20-year-old dude, a DJ that is putting his stuff out there, remixing artists' music, and now it's got played at the Super Bowl by freaking Rihanna. I mean,
that's game changing. Yeah, there's a couple of bits I want to cover in the headlines as well. I think the other big piece of news that we've really got to cover, that I'll be honest, I'm tired of hearing about, is ChatGPT and Microsoft. And my question is, what does it mean for Google? What does it mean for paid search? What does it mean for SEO? Or is it just a big faff about nothing?
I'll be honest, I had to Google what ChatGPT really does, because I keep seeing it absolutely everywhere. And, ChatGPT wrote my essay, but I didn't actually, I kind of avoided it like the plague. It was just, when something's in your face too much, I just don't want to see this. But yeah, I think it is something, I do. Yeah. I think it looks really, really intuitive, the way it's able to contextualize what you're saying to it. It's not like just picking up keywords and then just responding on that. It's like really in-depth kind of understanding of what it is that you're saying to it, which is, I can't lie, it did blow my mind a little bit from what I saw on the website. And Julia was saying she reckons she could be out of a job in terms of it being able to, what did you say it was? They could contact influencers on your behalf.
No, I was saying I'm scared of, because actually I wondered if Alex was going to lose her job, or a copywriter. I was this is getting dangerous.
That's it, yeah.
But then with anything AI generated, I was like, am I going to be out of a job in a couple of years' time? Because the other day I got invited to test out an influencer platform that's AI generated. It was not very good, I'm not going to lie, but it can improve in a couple of years. However, then I thought about it. Something that's really important in influencer marketing is influencer relationships. And I'm not too sure how AI would, for example, take influencers for a coffee every now and again. So we started getting into that momentum. But that whole thing is a bit...
I think that's the thing, right? So if you think about where ChatGPT could SEO is the obvious one. So I think from a search engine perspective, it's pushing out results that are far more cohesive and comprehensive than potentially what Google's doing. But also, it can, the other elements, like for example, if you hook it up to to Google Sheets or Excel or whatever it is, you could get it to write search ad copy, right? You could get it to write an entire landing page. You could get it to do all these things, but from my view, it still requires some sort of
human oversight,
human intervention.
Yep.
That's going to be QA and creative thinking and whatnot. Ross, what's your take as our search expert?
The obvious threat was to content. I think that was the one everyone sort of jumped to initially. But on the content side, they've already started producing tools that can detect whether it's AI written or not, a piece of content. So they've already found their way around that. So you'd hope this never happened, but let's say they started like replacing journalists and tried to do that through AI, it would get spotted straight away at the minute, unless it'd become like an arms race between the AI and then them developing tools to sort of combat the AI, detect the AI. So I don't think it's necessarily an immediate threat in that sense. I also don't think it's a threat to search either at all, really. The example I came up with was Alexa, for example. How many people have genuinely blindly ordered something via Alexa that isn't like, I don't know, milk? Because the second there's any, let's say there's a reasonable price tag attached to it, or there's several different features involved in whatever you're looking for, you're going to want to do a bit of research yourself. You're not just going to kind of blindly order that stuff. And I think it's the same with ChatGPT and the AIs. I don't envisage a situation where people are going to use it instead of search. I see it complementing search. So, for example, if you're looking for a laptop, you would perhaps say, I want to do some video editing. What should I look for in a new laptop? And then it's going to go look for dedicated graphics card, a new HD screen, whatever it might be. And then you use that information when you're actually looking for the laptop.
What's the difference between that and what people currently do? So at the moment, what I'd currently do is I'd go onto Google and say, like, you've got platforms like Which and other different reviews and things like that, Trustpilot. Are you saying that people are just going to switch from one platform to another to do their research? Or is there something that ChatGPT offers that we're not currently doing?
So looking at how Bing obviously we don't know how Bard's going to get implemented to Google, but if you look at how Bing have implemented, they haven't really, it's on beta, but they're implemented within the search page itself. You'll be able to ask different questions. You'll be able to ask a question, but then you'll be able to do the search separately. So you're not going to have to use two different tools for it. It's going to be integrated into the one. I was trying to think of a way of kind of summarizing it. I think it's because it's intelligent, not sentient, was the best thing I could come up with. So it's good at collating facts, working out logically which facts apply to which question or in what order.
Okay.
But it's not sentient enough to be able to look at, let's say, the cost of 30 different laptops and then adjust it based on your changing criteria. So going back to the laptop example, and if it comes back and says, right, dedicated graphics card, you need that for video editing. You go away and you go, yeah, but a really good dedicated graphics card is going to cost me 400 quid more. I'm not 400 quid bothered. That comes down your list in terms of the priority. It can't do that sentience for you that you would do if you were out there shopping yourself. So that's where I can't see it replacing your own research in that sense, particularly for like big ticket items. Like I say, if you're buying something relatively cheap where there's very few options, then maybe you just want a very quick response. Which one shall I buy? I don't really care which one it is. Just tell me which ones. Then I can perhaps see, but it also can't determine, it can't take into account opinion, right? So it's not very, it's not very good at taking 4 or 5 different opinions and then creating a reasoned response based on that information. It's all fact-based. And for that reason, I think it's always going to require, like if you want to read through the reviews for a laptop, you're going to have to do that yourself. And you're going to have to determine the tone of voice that the person's used in their review as to whether they're pleased or they're not. It's not be able to collate that sort of information for you. So I think search is always going to be there. I think people will just use it as a tool to decide what's important to search for or to answer factual questions that they need to know. I think that's what will be useful. I think it will complement it really nicely, though. Like I think it'll be a boon for search, not necessarily kill it off. That's how I see it.
Yeah. What you said about tone of voice, I agree, because I think when it comes to writing, especially for different brands, there's brand language, tone of voice, angle, things like that I don't think it's currently capable of picking up. But going back to your example with the laptop, I think it's probably not far from being able to take different opinions into consideration, taking those different pieces of language, positive reviews versus negative, and what those points are, and drafting up like an overall or average kind of outcome. And then I think one of the benefits of it is that it doesn't really have any ulterior motives. So like a lot of places like where you go and find reviews or places to go for comparisons, a lot of them have their own ulterior motive in terms of wanting to sway you one way or another, whereas ChatGPT is essentially completely impartial.
Until it isn't.
Yeah, until it isn't, yeah. And it'll probably get there. Probably get there. People will start buying.
It'll come down to like, because how you said kind of come up with kind of an averaged response. How willing are we to live our lives where every response everyone's getting is an averaged response? Like, I quite like the fact if you go and search for a laptop that someone might go, you know what, that has a better spec and it's actually a little bit cheaper, but I just bloody like that one because it's blue. That's quite a human thing, right? That you're just not going to get out of an AI doing your shopping for you. So, I think humans will always lean towards that sort of emotional side that they can't get from relying on that for results, really.
I think there's a wider discussion and topic here generally about AI and maybe particularly AI and the impact of AI on fintech. But I kind of want to leave that for another day to discuss. I kind of want to pick up on a couple of other headlines. So TikTok, all the rage at the moment. It's the talk of the town in terms of platforms. They've got some new features that they're rolling out. Ross, have you had a chance to take a look at these at all?
Yeah, so these are the promote features.
That's right. Yeah.
The cynical view on it was they basically rolled them out in response to that heating furor the other month, where it became apparent that TikTok was boosting content that it wanted to boost rather than necessarily doing it organically through what it thinks you want to see, if that makes sense. So there's kind of a button they can hit where they're like, right, send that viral. Influencers that have sort of shot to fame, like Carly Lame, for example, did he do that organically, or was that sort of TikTok sort of forcing that content in front of people, basically? A little bit unfair, maybe singling him out as an example, because obviously, it might not be the case. But so everyone's thinking that perhaps it's in response to that. But I think regardless of whether it is or it isn't, they are all useful things they've introduced. I mean, a lot of it is very similar to what's already out there on Facebook. So if you look at, for example, the more profile views option, that's basically a page-like campaign on Meta, or a follower campaign on Twitter, or a campaign to kind of increase your company page likes on or follows on LinkedIn. So it's stuff that's already on other platforms, but I think is a good step in the right direction for TikTok to roll out. The big one's probably the promote for others. So that's kind of more organic version of the Spark ads. So Spark ads is where basically as an advertiser you can take the UGC content, influencer content, and use it as an ad, obviously with their permission. This is basically a way where brands could sort of pick influencer content up and promote it almost as the influencer. So you're promoting it on their behalf almost. So it's a slightly more organic version of kind of a Spark ad, which I think is quite a good step forward. I think that taps into the element of that sort of native feel that TikTok's got. Everything feels very organic rather than being sort of paid led. That's quite a nice feature, I think. And then there's a couple of like more sort of small business oriented stuff around like the location targeting and the more messages. I think it's all good sort of steps forward, regardless of whether it's sort of a cynical response to the heating button or not. Really, I think it's all positive. It gives us as advertisers, it just gives us more tools in the toolbox to kind of go out there and promote business in different ways.
Feedback that we've had from clients and prospects around TikTok has been that basically just been around the targeting, right? It's a little bit too broad. And I think the concern is that, yes, all right, cost per clicks are significantly cheaper in comparison to Meta, but that lack of targeting parameters still makes it somewhat of a slightly more junior or secondary platform to Meta and Facebook. But I think these new features are leveling it up, and I think it'll be very interesting to kind of see where it goes. But I think it's a perfect segue into kind of our deep dive topic. I kind of want to discuss, are we seeing or are we at the beginning of a shift away from the traditional online advertising platforms to perhaps the non-traditional ones? So is Google losing its shine? Is Facebook losing its appeal? Is marketing budget being moved away from these platforms into shinier, newer platforms like TikTok? And do you think that trend will be set to continue? So, I thought we'd take a bit of a deep dive into that. And then kind of going back to that conversation around ChatGPT and Microsoft versus kind of like Google versus Bard. Let's kind of start there. Is this the end of Google?
No. It's just the beginning. It might be the beginning of Bing, not the beginning of Bing, but certainly it's the first time ever they're beating Google to the punch on something, I think.
I find this so funny. My dad used to work for Microsoft, and when I remember being like 10 and him being like, try and use Bing instead. And I'm like, but what is Bing? What? And now we're talking about this, and I just find it absolutely bizarre. But I think Google should fear TikTok, not Bing.
Yeah?
Why?
Gen Z is going to TikTok to search for stuff instead because it can visualize it. Restaurants, shopping, even questions. You go on TikTok and you type it in as you would on Google. You search something and you get a video of someone telling you about it instead.
That's scary for Google on a couple of fronts, right? Because obviously you've got Google search that's under threat from TikTok in that front, potentially Bing on that front. And then certainly they obviously, as everyone knows, they own YouTube as well. The way that users are consuming TikToks and then searching on TikTok for answers, is it competition for YouTube as well?
Well, but that's the thing. People think that TikTok's competition for Instagram, but so far I think TikTok has been competition to YouTube because the way that you consume the platform is unlike you consume Instagram. We were just talking about how advertising on TikTok is still a bit junior, but one, it's the lack of certain features, but two, it's because of the way you consume things. You go on Instagram quickly. You go a lot more times a day. to maybe tap in and check on your friends, to check someone's stories because you received a DM, to just do something quickly. So you end up going more, but you don't go and scroll on Instagram the same frequency that you go on TikTok. If you go to TikTok, you have the intent to go there and stay on the platform, which makes it hard to advertise because you're not really willing to leave the platform anytime soon. With these features, that might change a little bit. But TikTok is just like YouTube. You're there to consume, to scroll for hours, to soak in that content. And perhaps if something interests you, you're going to save it and you're going to return to it later. Hence why conversion there is a little harder. With these things coming into play, perhaps it changes the game a little bit.
I think it does massively. I think Google are somewhat on the back foot from a few fronts. I mean, they try to roll out YouTube Shorts. I don't know if anyone's ever used that functionality. It just doesn't have that same. It doesn't suck you in like TikTok does. You talk about the intention of opening TikTok and staying there. There's never an intention of staying on TikTok. You just get sucked in and you never leave.
Yeah.
Oh no, I have full intention. I go in as like, it's my TikTok hour of the day. I'm going to consume some tarot readings and see some cats and get advertised some restaurants that are going into my list. And then I go to them on the weekend. I don't Google anything anymore when it comes to food. I TikTok.
I've got a little confession to make actually on the TikTok conversation. I had to get my boyfriend to set a lock on my TikTok consumption time. So I said, can you just do a 4-digit code? Because it asks you to create the code, right? And if I create it, I know the code, so I'm just going to unlock it. So I had to get him to create a secret code for me. So after a certain time, 2 hours, it locks me out and I physically cannot do anymore. And every time it does it, I'm like, phew, thank God I'm off. I wouldn't have got off.
I'm quite happy to go on TikTok and just ignore my children. It's that good.
TikTok, have you heard that? That's your new address then.
Oh
I'm feeling a bit old at this point. I'm not taking too much.
Don't download it. It's just going to absorb your life.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm sort of keep circling back to ChatGPT, but I kind of want to talk about the Google Bing race. It's interesting, Ross, you said that, the beginning of Bing. Is it about time that we're going to have a 2-horse race in the search world? And what would that mean from a paid search perspective, I suppose?
Hopefully, I mean, it'd be great from our point of view. It was always a standing joke that the best feature on Bing was the import tool, where basically you import all your Google campaigns into Bing, because there was that little search volume on there. I mean, we were talking about sort of 5 to 10% probably of the market in the UK, a little bit more in sort of the US, but very little really. So it was always a case of, well, I don't really want to spend any time in there. So they introduced this tool where you could automatically pull all your Google campaigns into Microsoft Ads. But I think, if anything, it just shows that Microsoft aren't going to let Bing die, which I think is a good thing. They haven't given up on it. Even from the inside, it sort of got to a point where they weren't really innovating. They were just rolling out Google's features on a 6-month lag. And that was really just in order to enable people to move their campaigns over from Google easily. There was no innovation there. So, yeah, I'm hoping it is a bit of a turning point in that it'll give people a new reason to use Bing over Google and just give us an extra angle. I mean, competition's always good, right? I think that tying that back into TikTok as well, rather than kind of seeing it as a battle of kind of platforms. TikTok's obviously, stolen people's screen time from other platforms, but I don't know whether it's necessarily a threat as such in that sense. I think what it's done is set each platform's use case almost in stone. I'm not going to go on TikTok if I want a half-hour explainer video on how to remove the brake pads on my car. I'm going to go to YouTube for that.
That's true.
The kids aren't going to go onto TikTok if they want to watch a 20-minute episode of Peppa Pig. They're going to go to YouTube. So YouTube's still got its place for that longer format content. I think it does it better anyway, because it's at the point of need. I think search is very similar in that you probably can search for things on TikTok. It's trying to give you interesting content, not necessarily useful content. So I think search will always be there in the back end for the boring searches, like you're buying a new laptop. Just there doing its thing, really.
I think it's like a generational thing as well. So you said like you wouldn't go to TikTok for like a longer episode of things, but is that just because we came up using YouTube and that's what we've shown our children? And do you know what I mean? Whereas like the generation after, is more like, independently going towards TikTok, because they do have like longer video content on there.
If they did start doing long form content, maybe, yeah. But does that take away from what it is? I think if it tries to do too many things, because the beauty of TikTok is you go on there, Julia sets up a TikTok hour. She goes on there and it's just going to serve up loads of interesting videos, one after, like, short clips, one after the other. That's kind of the appeal, right? I think the point at which it starts showing Julia a half-hour video of someone switching their brake pads, people are going to stop using TikTok. So it will always continue to do what it's good at. It's just how well they can side load other features onto it. I don't see it necessarily as a threat. I think it will just push everyone along a little bit. I think it's just good competition. It's healthy. It's provided a new format no one had really experienced, and it's moved everyone along a little bit, I think, is the way I look at it anyway.
I agree with that. I think it's a time as well that platforms stop trying to just take over everything. And I'm talking to you, Meta.
That was Meta's problem, wasn't it? They were just trying to always be all things to all people. And I think TikTok has given them their comeuppance, really.
Yeah.
For some reason, they just thought that people would be bolder about having to go to different platforms for different things. And one platform should do everything. I mean, look at Instagram, the absolute mess that it's become within recent years, where you have stories and you have reels taking over. And they kind of forgot what Instagram was about, that it was a platform for you to share in picture format your life and snippets with your friends and family. And one, obviously, it turned into a more commercialized things, like everything does, but doesn't mean you have to lose that essence, right? And now they're looking into promoting pictures more than they do videos once again. And it's funny as well that TikTok started promoting carousels. And it's like, can we all just stick to what we're meant to? I don't mind going on Instagram and on TikTok and on YouTube, because you're right. I like scrolling on TikTok because I'm absorbing different things. But the minute I want to watch an hour-long podcast, I'm going to do that on YouTube. And sometimes I find a new podcast on TikTok because I see a short clip and then I'm like, this interests me. And then I jump onto YouTube to watch the full thing. So I think they all serve different purposes, but it's generational how you consume them a little bit.
100%. And I think I even got annoyed when Instagram started doing stories years ago, because I was like, no, that's Snapchat does that. What are you doing?
I do love that today, though, so it's a bit contradicting.
They went to a phase of putting stories on everything, didn't they? It's like you're on your WhatsApp. Like, I don't watch anybody's WhatsApp story.
No, I'm not interested.
I'm not, WhatsApp's there for me to talk to people who don't have iPhones.
Yeah.
That's why that exists.
Now Instagram has that new feature where on your DMs, they let you put like a little message bubble.
Yeah.
And it only works between people that you follow and follow you. So it's kind of like intimate. And I'm like, are we back to MSN?
I think there's just a couple of points here. Ross, you mentioned about, share of screen time. But it's not just limited to social platforms, is it? It's also having an impact on platforms like Netflix, Hulu, and all of these other streaming platforms. I mean, they're competing within themselves, but also at the same time, like yesterday, for example, I finished off the season finale of Sopranos, and it was about 20 minutes before I normally go to sleep. And I was like, well, I don't really fancy spinning up a new episode of something, so I'm going to just spend 20 minutes scrolling TikTok. And then I went to bed an hour and a half later. I think there's that element of it as well. So it's not just a linear competition between social media platforms. It's also, vertical between different types of streaming platforms as well. And I think the other thing as well, or at least what I've seen, is we've suddenly had the introduction of TikTok. And I kind of feel like now that there's a bit of competition out there, I almost feel like the other social media platforms have gone, actually, do you know what? If we add in a few features, we might be able to get a bit more traffic over here. And I don't know about you lot, but I've seen Pinterest suddenly pipe up. It's like, what were they doing for the last 3 years? And then all of a sudden, they've introduced a whole bunch of features. And actually, I'm kind of thinking, well, actually now Pinterest might be a viable. We've used it for a few campaigns in the past, but it feels now like it might be a viable platform to run activity on for particular clients. And then I think in the same respect as well, Reddit has started getting a little, certainly in the UK, Reddit has started getting a little bit more popular as well. Those sort of streams of thought lead me into two areas really, and we can kind of tackle them both really. One is the rise of influencer marketing and how that sits across all the different platforms, and then within the general media mix as well. because of this diversification away from the strongholds on Google and Facebook. And then second of all, that creating campaigns for clients are no longer a Google search and Facebook exercise. There's way more intricacies involved in that, depending upon the audience, the niche that we're targeting, locations, ages, etc. But yeah, let's talk a bit about the influencer stuff. How do you think TikTok has moved influencer along, and how do you think influencer therefore will challenge traditional media, for example, Julia?
Let's start with TikTok specifically. I think TikTok's quite an interesting one because at the same time that it gave space to a lot of new creators, I feel like even though TikTok is a bit saturated right now, it's a lot easier to either go viral or to get more traction there. But at the same time, unlike Instagram, TikTok's a platform where you go to scroll and endlessly scroll. This might change now with for example, more profile views, but it's very hard to go on TikTok and from a video go to that person's profile. You just go on to the next video and you don't even follow that person because you don't stay on your main feed. You stay on your For You page, which is just curated for you, but you don't know what's coming next. So in that sense, it's great for engagement and for getting overall awareness and traction. But I always suggest a multi-channel campaign when it comes to this, to see who's actually influencing people for the person that they are and not just because they got a lot of views. That might change now. How it's going to change, I'm not too sure. But with then moving on to the topic of traditional media, I think people see influencer marketing till this day slightly in the wrong manner. They think it's an alternative perhaps to paid. I don't think it is because the conversion is not there. It's not interest. It's a whole cycle and it's mostly about awareness. It's the same as putting an ad on TV. You're not going to get instant conversions out of that, are you? You're not expecting anyone to click a link, or sometimes people try and put QR codes on advertisement for TV, but that doesn't really work. I never point my phone to the TV. Going into if it interests me and I see it again on the tube ad and then I see it again on the internet, I then start becoming more aware of that product. And if it becomes front of mind and if it resonates with me, then I'll go into buying it. That's what influencer marketing is about. Unless it's some lip gloss that's become viral, people are not going to go and buy it instantly. It's about constantly putting that in front of people. And in that sense, I do think it challenges traditional media.
Kind of with all of everything kind of we've discussed, really, where does that leave brands in terms of building out their marketing campaigns? If we're making this move, or we're seeing the shift of audiences away from the Google properties, let's say, maybe spending a little less time on Netflix, definitely spending less time on meta platforms. What does that mean for brands that are building out their activity? Do they pile all the cash onto one platform and hope for the best?
I think it's giving people more options. People speak a lot about the challenges other platforms face now TikTok has arrived. But what about the conundrum TikTok's going to have around, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, the native sort of feel of its platform and removing that by adding in more paid features? Because the benefit of that platform is that things spread so easily organically and it just feels like a very natural process. Paid removes that quite a lot. And as paid marketing experts, we're very, very good at making things boring, I think, generally, which I think influencer does a good job of combating because it comes across as being from the heart rather than kind of a guy sat behind a computer going, I know what these people will like. We're going to create a video about this. So I think there's going to be that balance for TikTok of trying to make sure its platform stays in its lane, really. I think that's what we're starting to see with all the platforms is they're finding their kind of role within people's day, within people's lives. Is it a threat to Netflix? No, of course not. Will it mean people might spend less time watching films? Yeah, but they're still going to go to Netflix and go watch a film on there. Everyone's, I guess, always competing for people's time across the day. So I think it just gives brands more options. Each business individually, based on its strategy and where its audience sits, should have a distinctly different approach to which channels it goes live on anyway. And more options is only a good thing. But is influencer right for everyone? Is TikTok right for everyone? Of course not, but it's going to give people who haven't perhaps found success on some of the other platforms a new angle to go at and a new area to possibly find success, I think.
I'm largely in agreement. I think more options is definitely a better thing. I think for brands that have smaller budgets, they can come up with a dedicated strategy to reach their audience on a specific platform and then really monetize that, get ROI, and then expand out. And I think for the bigger brands, they can they can pretty much do a multi-channel approach to reach their audience without having to touch traditional media. So, not having to do any TV, not having to do any out of home. Not that I've got an issue with that. I quite enjoy those campaigns and putting them together. And I think they've got a time and place for them. But you can do a very sort of multi-channel, holistic approach to reach your audience just on online platforms. And then I think that means that brands who perhaps don't have TV money and out-of-home money can actually almost feel ubiquitous to their target customer, which means that, they're going to get those impressions and they're going to get that, their message across and be able to compete with the bigger brands as well. So I think there's some degree of creating a bit of a level playing field as well.
But that's what influencers is out there for. It's for that. It's not to, I feel like influencer sits between kind of like PR and paid, and people think it leans more one way than the other. And it's really not. It's all about, as you said, creating that awareness and those impressions. And it's almost like, it's not almost like, it's very much product placement, right? And I think with the new trends that people are seeing, and after a couple of years of influencer marketing being out there and people kind of understanding the mechanics of it, we go back into when people started realizing that celebrities didn't just like things for free. Because if you see a celebrity out there promoting something, back in the days, you're like, oh my God, Beyonce wears this perfume, must be amazing. Well, Beyonce is being paid to love that perfume. And it's quite obvious these days. And people are very much aware of that. Do people still buy into it? Yes, but it's a different take on it. The same now happens to influencer marketing. I think when it first came about, people were a lot more likely to trust those people because they were seen as trusted views. Influencers started promoting things for free because of their own desire and their own likeness to the product. Once it became commercialized, and through a couple of years, people now picked up on it. And it's like, well, why would I trust that person? They're making millions of bucks out of doing that. They're just selling me a product like everyone else. So we now have the de-influencing trend and how things are going. I don't think influencer marketing is going anywhere. I'd be out of a job if it did. I hope it doesn't.
I think it's only going to get bigger, really, to be honest with you.
Exactly. No, the amount of investment into it. But it's about brands understanding what it is for, how to place that product without just going like, buy this. Or create one huge campaign where everyone's going like, oh, this, perhaps you're not even going like, buy this, but, oh, this product is amazing. This is what it does for it. It's very clear that is an ad. Sometimes it serves a purpose. Sometimes you do need an ad for an ad, but sometimes let's take a more creative approach. And how can we place that product into the right people's hands? How can we place it into customers' hands that will advertise for you, UGC? How can we place it into the right influencers' hands where it does become natural and introduce it into influencers' lives in a way that it doesn't become just about the product, but that it becomes so front of mind that when you think of that person, you think of nothing but that product. And if that person's lifestyle interests you, therefore it does that product.
Ads are there to reinforce and state a call to action. But as you're kind of talking about that, the one example of, I think it was an amazing piece of influencer marketing, but it was Beats by Dre. Overnight, out of everywhere, in every music video, every sports player, they were wearing something by Beats by Dre. And that was basically because Jimmy Iovine at, I think it's Interscope, they created the product, and the best way to market it, which was actually really cost efficient for them, was to get their entire roster of celebrities to be wearing the headphones or have the pill in their hand. I think the first time I saw it was in the Lady Gaga video. It was a really solid way of influencer marketing where they create the awareness of the product, they create the trust for the product, but they were still running ads like everybody else. Cool. I think we've definitely done a deep dive on that topic. To all our listeners today, I hope you really enjoyed that. I certainly did. We'll be back in a few weeks with more headlines to discuss another deep dive topic. And Julia, Ross, Shanae, thank you very much for jumping on the podcast with me today.
The FML Podcast is brought to you by Growth Gorilla. To find out how our marketing growth experts can boost your fintech's growth, head to growthgorilla.co.uk. And make sure to search for the FML Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Growth Gorilla, thanks for listening.